My entitled family wants to take my house and give it to my brother, even though they kicked me out. The coffee maker beeped twice, the way it always did. A short, sharp little chirp to let me know the water was hot and the grounds were ready. I stood there in my kitchen in my socks and my old flannel shirt, and I watched the dark liquid drip into the glass pot. It was 6:17 in the morning. The sun was just starting to turn the sky that pale yellow color you only see in early spring. I could hear the birds outside, the same birds that had been singing in that same oak tree for 23 years. I poured the coffee into my mug, the one my daughter gave me for Father's Day back in 2009. It said, "World's okayest dad" on the side. We all laughed about that at the time. She said it was a joke, but I knew she meant it with love. I held that mug in my hands, and I felt the warmth spread through my fingers, and I thought about how quiet the house was, how it used to be full of noise, footsteps on the stairs, doors slamming, the TV blaring in the living room, the sound of my wife humming in the kitchen while she made pancakes. Now it was just me and the coffee and the birds. I sat down in my recliner. The leather was cracked and worn. I had bought that chair 30 years ago at a furniture store that doesn't even exist anymore. It had molded itself to my body over the decades. The left armrest was slightly flattened from where I always rested my elbow. I took a sip of my coffee and I looked out the window at the front yard. The grass needed cutting. The flower beds needed weeding. My neighbor Jerry waved at me from his driveway. I lifted my mug in a little salute. He was getting into his truck to go to work. Jerry is 68. He retired 3 years ago, but he still gets up every morning and puts on a collared shirt and drives to the hardware store just to help out his son who runs the place now. I used to have a son who ran a business. I used to have a lot of things. My name is Frank. I am 72 years old. I was born in 1952 in a small town outside of Pittsburgh. My father was a steelworker. My mother was a school teacher. They worked hard and they died young, and they left me with nothing but a work ethic and a fear of wasting time. I met my wife Margaret when I was 22. She was 19. She worked at the diner on Main Street. She had long brown hair and a smile that made you feel like you were the only person in the room. I fell in love with her the first time she brought me a cup of coffee. I was a mechanic back then. My hands were always greasy. She didn't care. She used to say she liked the smell of oil and gasoline on me. It meant I was a man who worked. We got married a year later. Small ceremony in the church her family went to. Her mother cried. My father shook my hand and told me I was making a mistake getting married so young. I told him he was wrong. I thought I was proving something. We had our first child, Daniel, in 1974. He came out screaming and red-faced, and I held him in my arms and I felt something shift inside me. A weight, a responsibility, a love that I had never known was possible. I worked double shifts at the garage. I took on side jobs fixing cars in people's driveways. I saved every penny to buy a house. We found a small 3-bedroom ranch on Maple Street. The roof leaked, the basement flooded, the furnace was older than I was, but it was ours. I paid the mortgage every month with money I earned with my own 2 hands. I never missed a single payment, not one. Margaret stayed home with Daniel, and then 2 years later, our daughter Emily came along. Emily was the quiet one. She had her mother's eyes and her mother's gentle way of moving through the world. Daniel was all fire. He was loud and restless and always pushing against something. I remember taking him to the park when he was 5, and he ran so fast he fell and scraped his knees, and he got back up and kept running. I loved that about him. I loved his hunger. I worked 14-hour days for 25 years. I came home smelling like oil and sweat, and I would sit at the dinner table and listen to my children talk about their days, and I would feel like I had done something right. Daniel played baseball. I coached his team. Emily played the piano. I built her a little stage in the basement so she could perform for us. Margaret made every holiday magical. Thanksgiving dinners that lasted for hours. Christmas mornings with wrapping paper everywhere. Birthday parties with homemade cakes and silly games. I look back at those years and I see them through a fog. A golden fog. The kind of fog that makes everything look soft and beautiful, even when you know it wasn't perfect. We had arguments. Money was tight. There were nights I lay awake wondering how I was going to pay for Emily's braces or Daniel's new baseball equipment. But we managed. We always managed. Daniel went to college on a partial scholarship. He studied business. He was the first one in our family to get a degree. I was so proud I cried when he walked across that stage. Emily went to nursing school. She wanted to help people. She had that gift. She could make anyone feel calm just by sitting next to them. Margaret and I were empty nesters by the time I turned 55. It felt strange at first. Quiet. Too quiet. But we adjusted. We started taking walks together in the evenings. We joined a book club. We talked about traveling. We never did, but we talked about it. Daniel got married to a woman named Sarah. She was a real estate agent. Ambitious, driven, the kind of woman who always had her phone in her hand. Margaret liked her right away. I thought she was fine, a little intense for my taste. But she made Daniel happy, and that was all that mattered. They had 2 children, my grandchildren, James and Lucas. I remember holding each of them on the day they were born and feeling that same shift inside me, that same weight, that same love. I would do anything for those boys. They were my blood, my legacy. Emily married a man named Tom. Tom was a contractor. Good guy. Solid. Quiet like Emily. They had a daughter, my granddaughter Maya. She was the sweetest little thing. I used to take her to the park and push her on the swings for hours. She would laugh, and I would feel like I was the richest man in the world. I retired at 65. I had saved enough. Not a fortune, but enough. Margaret and I planned to enjoy our golden years together. We bought an RV, a used one. We were going to drive across the country, see the Grand Canyon, see the redwoods, see the ocean. We had maps spread out on the kitchen table for weeks. We had itineraries. We had lists of national parks. We were going to finally do all the things we talked about. That was the plan. Then Margaret got sick. It happened fast. She had been tired for a few months. She brushed it off, said it was just age, said she needed to sleep more. I didn't push. I should have pushed. By the time she went to the doctor, it was already stage 4. Pancreatic cancer. The kind that doesn't give you time to say goodbye. She died on a Tuesday morning in November. The leaves were falling outside the hospital window. I was holding her hand. She looked at me and she said, "Frank, I had a good life." I told her she had the best life. She smiled and closed her eyes, and she was gone. That was 9 years ago. 9 years of silence. 9 years of sleeping on my side of the bed and pretending the other side wasn't empty. 9 years of cooking for one, eating for one, living for one. I thought my children would keep me going. I thought they would be my reason to wake up every morning. At first they were. Daniel and Sarah would come over every Sunday for dinner. Emily and Tom and Maya would come on Saturdays. The house was full of noise again. Footsteps, laughter. The sound of my grandchildren running through the hallways. I felt alive. I felt like I still had purpose. Then, slowly, the visits got shorter. Sundays became every other Sunday. Saturdays became once a month. The excuses started. Daniel was busy with work. Sarah had a real estate closing. The kids had soccer practice. Emily was working double shifts at the hospital. Tom had a big project. Maya had homework. I understood. Everyone is busy. Everyone has their own life. I didn't want to be a burden. I told them to come when they could. I meant it. But I started to notice things. Small things. The way Sarah would look at Daniel when I mentioned my will. The way Daniel would change the subject when I talked about the house. The way Emily would stop by, but she would never stay long. She would stand in the doorway with her coat still on. She would say she just wanted to check on me. She would say I looked fine. She would leave. I tried to ignore it. I tried to convince myself I was being paranoid. That's what old men do. They get suspicious. They get needy. I told myself they loved me. They were just busy. I was still their father. They would always be there for me. Then my brother Robert came back into the picture. Robert is younger than me by 4 years. He always had a chip on his shoulder. He was jealous of me growing up. I got the steady job. I got the house. I got the family. He bounced around, lost jobs, lost marriages, lost his way. He never had children. He never had a home that lasted. He called me out of the blue a few years after Margaret died. He said he wanted to reconnect, said he regretted how things had been between us. I thought he had changed. I thought maybe age had softened him. I invited him over. We had coffee in my kitchen. He talked about how he had been working odd jobs, how he was living in a tiny apartment, how he was tired of being alone. I felt sorry for him. He was my brother. I had to help him. I let him stay with me for a few weeks. Then a few weeks turned into a few months. He slept in the guest room. He ate my food. He used my water. He watched my TV. I didn't mind. It was nice having someone in the house, someone to talk to, someone to watch the game with on Sunday afternoons. He was charming when he wanted to be. He could make you laugh. He could make you forget all the bad things he had done. But there was always something behind his eyes, something calculating. I saw it sometimes. Late at night when he thought I wasn't looking. I should have listened to that instinct. Daniel and Sarah started visiting more often when Robert moved in. They would come over and all three of them would sit in the living room and talk in low voices. They would stop talking when I walked in. I didn't think much of it at first. I figured they were just getting along. I figured it was nice that they had each other. I was wrong. The first red flag was the power of attorney. Daniel came to me one afternoon with papers. He said it was just a safety precaution, a way for him to help me manage my finances in case something happened to me. He said he was worried about my memory. He said it was common for men my age to need help. He said it was just a piece of paper. He said it was for my own good. I signed it because I trusted him. He was my son. He would never do anything to hurt me. That's what I told myself. That's what a father is supposed to believe. The second red flag was when Sarah started talking about the house. She said it was too big for me. She said I was wasting money on utilities and property taxes. She said I should consider selling it, moving to something smaller, an apartment maybe, a retirement community, somewhere with other people my age. I told her I wasn't ready. I told her this house was my home. Margaret and I built this house. I raised my children in this house. I would die in this house. She smiled that smile of hers, the one that didn't reach her eyes. She said, "Of course, Frank, I understand." The third red flag was the day I found my will missing. I kept it in the top drawer of my desk in the study, a plain manila folder with my name on it in black marker. I had written it after Margaret died. Everything was supposed to go to Daniel and Emily, split evenly, 50-50. The house, the savings, the life insurance, everything. I was a simple man. I didn't have a lot, but I had enough, and I wanted my children to have it. That was the whole point of working my whole life. That was the whole point of sacrifice. I went to the drawer and I opened it, and the folder was gone. I searched every drawer in that desk. I searched the filing cabinet. I searched my bedroom closet. Nothing. I asked Robert if he had seen it. He looked confused. He said no. He said maybe I had misplaced it. He said old men forget things. He said it with a little smirk. I didn't like that smirk. I called Daniel. I asked him about the will. There was a pause on the other end of the line. Then he said, "Dad, you signed it over to me, remember?" I said, "What are you talking about?" He said, "The power of attorney." He said I had given him permission to handle my affairs. He said he had updated the will. He said it was for my protection. He said I was getting confused. I told him I wasn't confused. I told him I wanted my will back. He said he would bring it over. He never did. I called Emily. I told her what was happening. She was quiet on the phone, quieter than usual. She said, "Dad, maybe Daniel is right. Maybe you need help." I said, "Emily, I need you to listen to me. I'm not confused. I'm not losing my mind. They are taking my things." She said, "Dad, I think you're overreacting." She said she had to go. She said she would call me later. She never did. That was the beginning of the isolation. The visits stopped completely. My grandchildren stopped coming. I called James on his birthday. I left a voice message. He never called back. I called Lucas. Same thing. I called Maya. I called her 3 times. Nothing. I sent cards. I sent checks. The checks were never cashed. I felt like I was disappearing, like I was already dead, and nobody had told me. Robert stayed. He started acting like the house was his. He moved his things into the guest room, his clothes in the closet, his toiletries in the bathroom. He would sit at the head of the table when we ate dinner. I let him. I didn't have the energy to fight. I didn't have the will. Then I found the letters. They were in Robert's room. He had left his door open one morning, and I saw a stack of papers on the nightstand. I shouldn't have looked. I know that. But something in me needed to know. I went in and I picked up the top letter. It was from Daniel. I read it. My hands were shaking. The letter said they needed to accelerate the timeline. Robert was to keep me in the house, keep me calm, keep me from seeing a lawyer. Daniel had the power of attorney. Sarah had the real estate connections. Emily was on board because she didn't want to cause problems. The plan was simple. They were going to transfer ownership of the house to Robert. Robert would then sell it and split the proceeds with Daniel and Sarah. Emily would get a smaller cut. They all agreed she didn't need as much because she was so agreeable. That was the word they used. Agreeable. As if it was a flaw. As if her decency was something to be exploited. I put the letter down. My hands were numb. My chest was tight. I couldn't breathe. I walked out of the room and I went to my kitchen and I sat down in my chair and I stared at the wall. I had to look up the definition of the word betrayal in my own mind. I knew what it meant in theory, but I had never felt it. Not like this. The worst part wasn't the money. The worst part wasn't even the house. The worst part was that my own children had made me a mark. They had sat around a table somewhere. My son, my daughter, my brother, my daughter-in-law, they had sat around a table and they had discussed me like I was a business deal, like I was a property to be liquidated. They had planned it all out. The visits, the power of attorney, the will, the manipulation. They had played me for years. They had let me believe I was still their father, still the head of the family, all while they were carving me up like a piece of meat. I called Daniel. I told him I knew. I told him about the letter. He didn't deny it. He didn't apologize. He said, "Dad, you don't need the house. You don't need the money. You need to be taken care of. We are taking care of you." I said, "Taking care of me is not the same as stealing from me." He said, "It's not stealing, it's planning. You don't have the capacity to manage your own affairs anymore." I said, "I have more capacity than you will ever have. I raised you, I fed you, I clothed you, I worked myself into the ground for you. And this is what I get? This is my reward?" He said, "Dad, you're being emotional." I hung up the phone. I sat there in the silence and I realized something. I had spent my whole life working for other people, for my wife, for my children, for my family. I had given them everything I had. I had given them my time, my money, my energy, my love. I had sacrificed so much for them that I had nothing left for myself. And when I needed them most, they turned on me. They pulled the knife out and they stabbed me in the back, and they pretended it was for my own good. The legal battle started a few weeks later. I scraped together enough money to hire a lawyer, a young woman named Rachel, who looked at my case and shook her head. She said, "This happens more often than you would think." She said families turn on each other over money all the time. She said the key was the power of attorney. I had signed it willingly. Even if I was manipulated, even if I was confused, I had signed it. That made it legal. That made it mine. She said we could fight it, but it would be expensive. It would be long, and I might lose anyway. I went to court. I sat on a hard wooden bench. I looked at my children across the room. Daniel wouldn't meet my eyes. Sarah was texting on her phone. Emily was crying. She was always crying. She looked at me once, and I saw something in her face. Guilt? Shame? Fear? I wanted to go to her. I wanted to hold her. I wanted to tell her it was okay. But it wasn't okay. It would never be okay. The judge ruled in Daniel's favor. He said I had signed the documents. He said there was no clear evidence of fraud. He said the transfer of the house was valid. He said Robert had the right to sell it. I watched the judge bang his gavel, and I felt the last piece of my heart crack open. The house was sold 6 months later. Robert pocketed his share and disappeared. I never saw him again. Daniel and Sarah bought a bigger house. I saw the pictures on Facebook. They were smiling. They were happy. They had their money. They had their future. Emily sent me a card. It said she was sorry. She said she never wanted it to go this way. She said she loved me. I threw the card in the trash. I moved into a small apartment on the other side of town. 2 bedrooms, a tiny kitchen, a bathroom I could barely fit in. The walls were thin. I could hear my neighbors arguing at night. I could hear them laughing. I could hear them living their lives. I sat in my chair and I stared out the window at the parking lot, and I thought about how different my life was supposed to be. I was supposed to be in that house. I was supposed to be surrounded by my grandchildren. I was supposed to be loved. Instead, I was here, alone, forgotten. I still go to the hardware store. I go to the coffee shop. I sit there for hours, and I watch people. I watch young fathers with their sons. I watch them pick out paint, pick out tools, pick out flowers for their wives. I remember doing that. I remember the weight of my son in my arms. I remember the smell of his hair. I remember teaching him to ride a bike, teaching him to shave. I remember the day he got his first job, the day he got married, the day his first child was born. I remember it all, every detail, every moment, every sacrifice. And it all meant nothing. I am 72 years old. I have a heart condition. I have arthritis in my hands. I have a bad hip that hurts when it rains. I take 7 different medications every morning. I have a life alert button around my neck. I press it sometimes just to see if anyone comes. They always do. But they are strangers. They are paid. They don't know me. They don't love me. They just do their job and they leave. I still call my children sometimes. I call Daniel and I get his voicemail. I call Emily and she picks up, but she doesn't say much. She says she's busy. She says she'll call me back. She never does. I called my granddaughter Maya last week. She answered. She said, "Grandpa, I can't talk right now."
She said she was studying. She said she would call me later.
I told her I loved her. She said, "I love you too, Grandpa." But it sounded like something you say to a stranger. Something you say to be polite. Something you say to get off the phone. I don't blame her. She was raised in that world. She was taught that love is conditional. She was taught that people are disposable. She was taught that money matters more than family. She was taught by her parents, by my son, my daughter, my brother. They taught her well. They taught her how to survive. They taught her how to be a cold and calculating human being. They taught her everything I never wanted her to learn. Sometimes I think about what I would do differently. I think about the day Daniel brought me those papers, the power of attorney. I think about how I held the pen in my hand. I think about how I looked at him and saw my son, my boy, the one I had rocked to sleep, the one I had put a Band-Aid on his knee, the one I had taught to drive. I looked at him and I trusted him. I signed my name, and that was the end of my life. I think about Margaret. I think about her face in the hospital bed. I think about her saying she had a good life. I think about how she never knew what would happen, how she died thinking our family was whole, how she died thinking I would be okay. I am not okay. I will never be okay. But at least she didn't have to see this. At least she didn't have to watch her legacy crumble. At least she didn't have to watch her children become strangers. I go to her grave sometimes. I sit on the grass and I talk to her. I tell her about my day. I tell her about the apartment, about the neighbors, about the pain in my hip, about the loneliness. I tell her I'm sorry. I'm sorry for failing. I'm sorry for trusting. I'm sorry for being so blind. She doesn't answer. She never does. But I feel her sometimes. In the breeze, in the sunshine, in the silence. She is with me. I know she is. And maybe that's all I have left. I don't know what happens next. I don't know if I'll ever speak to my son again. I don't know if I'll ever see my grandchildren grow up. I don't know if I'll die in this apartment, or in a hospital, or in a nursing home. I don't know if anyone will come to my funeral. I don't know if anyone will cry. I don't know if anyone will remember me. I used to think legacy was about things, about money, about property, about the house on Maple Street. But I was wrong. Legacy is about love, and I have no love left. They took it all. They took everything. I sit here now, in my chair, my old chair, the one from my old house, the one I couldn't bear to leave behind. I sit here and I drink my coffee, and I look out the window, and I think about the silence. The silence is louder now than it ever was. It's the sound of absence, the sound of betrayal, the sound of a life that was given away piece by piece, until there was nothing left. My hands are shaking. They shake all the time now. I don't know if it's the medication, or the years, or the grief. I don't know if it matters. I'm still here. I'm still breathing. I'm still waking up every morning and making my coffee and sitting in my chair. I'm still doing the things I've always done, but nothing feels the same. Nothing will ever feel the same. I used to believe in family. I used to believe that blood was thicker than water. I used to believe that love was a bond that could never be broken. I was wrong. I was so wrong. Love is fragile. Love is conditional. Love can be taken away in an instant. Love can be used as a weapon. Love can be twisted and turned and shaped into something ugly. I know that now. I know it better than I ever wanted to. They're gone. All of them. My son, my daughter, my brother, my grandchildren. They're gone. And they took my house, and they took my money, and they took my dignity, and they left me with nothing. Nothing but memories. Nothing but regrets. Nothing but this cold, empty apartment, and the sound of my own breathing. I think about the old house sometimes. I picture it in my mind. The white fence, the garage, the oak tree in the front yard, the kitchen where Margaret used to cook, the living room where we used to sit and watch the kids play. I picture it all. I close my eyes and I see it. I see the Christmas mornings, the birthday parties, the summer cookouts. I see the faces, the smiles, the laughter. I see it all. And then I open my eyes, and I'm here, in this chair. In this room, in this life that was stolen from me. I don't know if I'll ever forgive them. I don't know if forgiveness is even possible. I don't know if I want to forgive them. They took everything. They took my home. They took my family. They took my future. They left me with nothing, and they didn't even look back. They didn't even say sorry. They just went on with their lives. They just kept moving forward. They just forgot about me. But I won't forget. I can't forget. Every day I wake up and I remember. I remember the look on Daniel's face when he handed me those papers. I remember the smirk on Robert's face when he moved into my guest room. I remember the silence on the phone when I called Emily. I remember it all. I carry it with me. It's heavy. It's so heavy. But I can't put it down. I don't know how. So I sit here. I drink my coffee. I watch the birds outside my window. I wait for the phone to ring. I wait for something to change. But nothing changes. Nothing will ever change. This is my life now. This is what's left. This is what they gave me. This is what I have. And the worst part is, I still love them. I still love them all. I love Daniel. I love Emily. I love my grandchildren. I love Robert. Even after everything, even after what they did, I still love them. And that's the cruelest part of all. Because love is supposed to protect you. Love is supposed to make you stronger. But love is what broke me. Love is what destroyed me. Love is what left me here, alone in this chair, with nothing but my coffee and my memories, and the sound of my own heart still beating. I don't know how long I have left. I don't know if I'll see tomorrow, or the day after, or the day after that. But I know I'll wake up. I'll make my coffee. I'll sit in my chair. I'll look out the window. And I'll remember. I'll remember everything. The good, the bad, the love, the betrayal. I'll remember it all. Because that's all I have left. That's all I'll ever have.